thing to be. There was no, you had no power, you had no freedom. People weren't interested in what you said. They were only interested in you listening to them, buying their things. We were completely defined from the outside. And going back to what you said about the music coming from the inside, this punk gave women, and it wasn't just lyrics, but it was also sound. How do women want to communicate themselves through sound and through lyrics to other women and build a bridge or dig a hole through this mass of male mediation and just be really, really direct about what they feel, lyrics that reflects their own experience, and also a feeling of precariousness. Because don't forget that this was a time, we're looking back at it through historical eyes, this was a time where there was no precedent, or very little precedent. Of course, there were the liver birds and things like that, but we didn't really know about those people. Most people knew about Suzi Quatro, but it was like there was an excitement about being a pioneer with all of that kind of risk and thinking, well, maybe people won't like this, but I'm going to do it anyway kind of feeling, and I did a very interesting interview with Ari, which was great because she got so angry, which was really very her. But and she just said, look, we're almost like army vets because we have been through so much, and actually, unless you've been through that experience, it's very, very difficult to communicate what it actually felt like. And I think one of the great things personally for writing the book for me was talking to women who'd been through the same. There's a whole swathe of stuff that you don't even need to speak about, because we all went through that thing of getting up on a stage for the first time. Your instrument is loud, will people like you? The opposition that people had, the way that you got treated by the press if you were lucky, in inverted commas, enough to get a review. It was a very, very unusual experience. And I don't think that a lot of us realized at the time how unusual it was, because we were so busy. It was a really, really chaotic, busy,
and different time of your life as well, like the end of teenage years as well. It's you're learning so much. So you've mentioned what we haven't mentioned yet is your kind of methodology, so to speak. Who did you decide to approach? How did you approach the people you approached? Was it because you knew them? And what was the reaction you got when you asked them to talk to you about their experience?
Well, that was really, you see, this is where my PhD supervisor got very frustrated, because he's a very methodical man. But I had 2 children and a full-time job. So I could not be, I didn't have the luxury of being methodical. So I did a combination of things. So with Brighton, I contacted people that I knew, and through a chain of people, I found a lot of people that I'd completely lost touch with. And the very first interview was with a woman in Brighton from the Mockingbirds called Julie Blair. And I expected her to be talking about political involvement and stuff like that. And she just said, no, I did it because it was fun. And that was a real wake-up call to me, because I had to realize that all of us did it for different reasons. So that was one thing. But at the same time, I went and sat in the local library and I wrote 200 letters to local newspapers around the UK, asking them to put people in touch with me if they'd played an instrument. That was like a really, 200, addressing 200. But that was very interesting. What came out of that was various different things. I got a letter from a very angry pensioner saying, how dare I do a PhD on his money, which was completely wrong, because I wasn't, because I was paying for it myself. Then I got the newspaper headlines were really derogatory. People would take the letter, and rather than printing it as a letter, they do an article saying punkettes wanted. you know. The Daily Mail contacted me and they said that they were interested in my research. Who did I speak to and who was I married to? And I said, that's none of your business. I'm not writing about my husband or my family. And they said, oh, well, if you won't let us put that, we won't do the article then. And by that time, they'd already got all my contacts, you know, typical Daily Mail. But on the good side, a journalist from The Independent picked it up in his local newspaper, and he contacted me, and he did a little article about it. And in that article, I'd said how much I liked polystyrene because she wasn't a typical glamorous woman. You know, she was like a real person, like somebody.
Yeah.
And the funny thing is that Polly got quite cross about that, apparently. I got a phone call one Sunday morning in my house, all chaos, children running around in pajamas, polystyrene saying, look, basically telling me that she was sexy. I mean, it's really, you know, it was such a kind of, I had a really interesting conversation. I had nothing, I had a diary that was all written. I had to write on it over the things that were already in it with this pen, all the things that she was saying, you know. So it was a real combination of formal interviews and people really sort of odd ways of people getting in touch, you know. I did get some very nice letters. I mean, Liz Naylor, who played in The Gay Animals in Manchester, wrote me a really nice letter. I mean, she's actually a writer, and it
she's
was
in the documentary, isn't she?
yes, she is.
Yes.
And she was great. And so I ended up speaking to a lot more people than I thought I was going to speak to. I mean, I had letters back from lots and lots of people that I didn't get the opportunity of speaking to because I had no idea how time consuming it was going to be interviewing people. And I had to learn all those things about not talking over people, you know, asking open questions. There was one genius person who I won't mention, but she was really clever. Well, she wasn't. What she did was every time I asked her a question, she said, oh, you mean blah, 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 blah. And I say, yes. And she'd just say, no. So, you know, it was a really clever way of not actually telling me anything. But, and I had people who didn't want to speak. Jeanette Lee from who'd played with Pill, she didn't want to speak to me, and she just said, I've decided not to do any interviews with anyone. Well, is this fair enough? You know, I really respect that, actually. But I actually, in the end, I ended up with a whole new load of friendships, which for a middle-aged woman living in the suburbs with a husband who worked all hours and children was such a fantastic thing.
Yes.
And the angel that is Caroline Coon, when the book came out, she just, because I was really upset because the original hardback it cost about £60 or £70. I thought, how are people going to be able to afford this?